Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Patty Bubs Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Bubniak, and today we will set out to answer the question, are we truly free to roam the earth? Little introduction here. Back in August of this year, I crossed the border between the United States and Canada, and more specifically, the U.S.-Canada border crossing that is located in the town of Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, where the northern terminus of the United States Route 3 is. This is the only border crossing in the state of New Hampshire, and it's not visited that much. So, pretty desolate area. I parked right next to the border crossing station on the United States side and got out to walk along the U.S.-Canada border on the northernmost section of the Cohost Trail, which is a trail that stretches all the way from the Fourth Connecticut Lake to Hart's location in the middle of New Hampshire, and it goes through the northern woods of the state as well as the White Mountains. Since we were on an international border, I needed to carry my passport with me during this hike. Luckily, nobody asked me for it during the hike, and I only ended up using it once we got back into the car and drove up to the border crossing station on the Canadian side. I managed to get this photo of a border marker during my hike, and the metal plate is about the size of a pop socket. It was not immediately visible, and in order to see it, I specifically had to be on the lookout for it. The funny thing is, however, the border between the United States and Canada, for the most part, is largely unprotected, and hence, not patrolled. The majority of this border is land-based, and to distinguish where it is, lines of trees have been cut down, and these lines of forest that have been cleared sort of look like those clear cuts with power lines going through them that you might see in your area. In this case, however, those power lines are not there. Now, I am sure that if somebody was not aware of the fact that this clearing marked the border between two countries, they would not see anything wrong with just walking from one side to the other, and definitely wouldn't think that much about it. But in reality, doing this is considered a crime, and the offender would most likely be arrested and deported for not properly entering the country. In order to enter any country in the proper manner, one must present themselves in front of an immigration officer, whether they be on land, at an airport, or at a boat dock. In addition to presenting themselves, they must also present a passport, which is a booklet that is used to prove identity and nationality. In addition to this, they must answer any questions that are asked of them by the border officer. The same officer makes the final determination of whether or not someone may enter the nation for which the officer represents. Although this is what we must do to travel beyond the borders of any nation, other documents have a different take on our ability to travel. Article 13, Section 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that, and I quote, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state, unquote. And Section 2 states that, quote, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country, unquote. Almost every nation on this earth has signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and so they are obliged to follow it. In some cases, this right to travel freely and reside within the borders of each nation is upheld, specifically in the European Union. If you are a citizen of a European Union member country, you have the right to reside in all other European Union nations, and all you must do is update your information in order to reflect this change, sort of like a change of address on your driver's license. In terms of the freedom of travel between nations, the only area of the world where this is truly upheld is the Schengen area, where there are no controls when crossing between nations that are a part of this area. In this case, the right of travel is being upheld. However, in pretty much every other place, one must have a passport to travel outside of the territory that is claimed by the country that they are in. I would like to provide you with a few Merriam-Webster dictionary definitions. A right is something to which one has a just claim. A passport is a formal document issued by an authorized official of a country to one of its citizens that is usually necessary for exit from and re-entry into the country that allows the citizen to travel in a foreign country in accordance with visa requirements and that requests protection for the citizen while abroad. The definition of a license is a permission granted by competent authority to engage in a business or occupation or in an activity otherwise unlawful. A passport is a formal document issued by a government that allows somebody to travel, and you need that to travel. A license is permission granted by a competent authority, usually a government, allowing you to do something that, if you did not have the license to do, would be unlawful to do. And since it's considered illegal to travel beyond the borders of any country without a passport, and that passport is issued by a governing authority, therefore it is permission from them to do something that would otherwise not be legal to do without their permission, and therefore it can effectively be considered a license. This is a license to travel. Remember, since a license is permission issued by a governing body in order to do something, it can be revoked at any time by the body that issued it. Take, for example, a driver's license. If you get too many points on it, it can be suspended or flat out revoked. It can also be revoked for failing to pay court fees or for failing to comply with a court order. Based on this, a passport is a revocable license to travel. This is definitely true for U.S. passports because on page 6 of the passport, it specifically states, and I quote, "This passport is the property of the United States." Title 22, Code of Federal Regulations, Section 51.7. It must be surrendered upon demand by an authorized representative of the United States government, unquote. However, a right is something to which someone has a just claim. Remember that. The preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights sets the, and I quote, Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, unquote. This means that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights applies to all of us. If the right of free travel and freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state has been affirmed in Article 13 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, then why do we need a passport, which is a revocable license to travel, in order to exercise this right? And now, with all the things we have discussed so far in mind, I leave you with a few questions to consider. Are we truly free to exercise our inalienable human right to freely travel between each nation and move or reside within the borders of each nation? What is stopping us from exercising our fundamental human rights that are stated in the UDHR? If every country requires you to get a passport to leave their territory, but we have an inalienable right to travel freely, does that mean that every country is committing a human rights violation? And lastly, who or what do you think is responsible for this? How did we get to the point that we are at today? Please feel free to leave your comments in the comments section of this video. This has been Patty Bubs Podcast, Episode 1. Are we truly free to roam the earth? I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.